So what, if anything, will the government do this time around to help families like Gary's? Where will the axe fall? Who will be hit hardest by the rising tax burden? Yeah, big questions, aren't they? Joining us now to try and give us some answers, former Tory MP and Treasury Minister Justine Greening, who helped to deliver the emergency budget of 2010. We also have Apprentice winner and finance expert Tim Campbell. Good morning to you, Tim. We know your mum worked in the care sector as well, so that will undoubtedly resonate for you, what you heard Gary say there. Justine, maybe we can start with you, because you were part of the government that famously, when you took office, had a note in the Chancellor's office saying there's no money left, it's all been spent. How did you go about in 2010 attacking the parts of the budget that needed attacking first in order to help as many people as possible, but also sort out what was going wrong? And how is Jeremy Hunt going to do that today in a way that's going to help Gary and going to help nurses, going to help education? Because there's so many things that are in desperate need.
I think it's a very different challenge. I mean, firstly, in 2010, we'd fought an election on the need to get our public finances back under control and into shape, and people had voted us in, and we were actually in a coalition government, so we were working cross-party to work out a plan in 50 days that the markets would buy into. And essentially, if we hadn't done that, we'd have had what we saw after the mini-budget, which is our borrowing rates going through the roof. How we approached that was to be really clear about what we were trying to do in terms of protecting people, but also in terms of the tax burden as well. And I think you're going to see Jeremy Hunt take a similar approach in that he's going to have to work out where he wants to fill his gap. The challenge, I think, is that we had a mandate for getting on with that emergency budget. I think for Jeremy Hunt, he doesn't have that. He's trying to restore credibility with the markets, but fundamentally the mandate this government has is to deliver a levelled-up Britain. And actually, fundamentally, that's also how we put our finances back into shape, because this is a country where we have challenges for people on the ground, cost of living crisis, at the same time, a skills crisis.
Yes.
Andrew Bailey, Governor of Bank of England, yesterday saying companies haven't got the skills they need to grow. So fundamentally, the big challenge in the longer term for Jeremy Hunt, Rishi Sunak, is to provide some solutions for how you connect people up to opportunities in our economy.
Yes, well, what's interesting is, of course, is that, and it's important for Gary, who we were just hearing from there, that it is thought that benefits will rise in line with inflation, which is good news for those, and you will know that because your mum worked so hard, didn't she? Was a single mum back then. Raising benefits in line with inflation is a really important thing, and pensions, of course. But as a counterpoint, I just want to point out lots of people are reacting to what may be coming up today. Danny on Twitter says, taxes going up, services coming down, but don't worry, the benefits are going up. What about those that work and aren't entitled to benefits? No wonder some people think they're better off not working. Now, a lot of people, while having sympathy for those on benefits, will be feeling like Danny this morning.
They will be. I think the difficulty is that lots of people are going to find it really difficult over the next couple of months. And it's not enough just to scare people. We've got to give them actionable points of what they can do to make their lives better. For me, it's really simple. You've got to assess where you are, really outline what your outgoings are and see how you can manage that. Conserve what you can and create employment opportunities or additional revenue where possible, and then talk to people. Go out there and talk to individuals. Seek the assessment from benefits, support services or debt charities that are out there. So that ACT process is really important. But I think from a perspective of government, around social mobility, which you had a part to play in, and also levelling up, we have to really hold our government to account to say we have to do more because people are really scared.
Justine, we've got the idea that potentially benefits will go up in line with inflation. Pensions could well go up in line with inflation. Our nurses are asking for a pay rise, which goes up in line with inflation, and then a little bit above that to 17%. Where do the government draw the line at what they are going to be able to deliver on and what they aren't? Because if they can't look after our nurses, the nurses are going to strike. And it wasn't that long ago we were all stood on the doorstep applauding our nurses for the commitment and the hard work they put in during the pandemic.
Exactly, and so what this budget needs to do is to start breaking that cycle. We can't just keep on trimming, if you like, our way to success. What we have to do is stabilise public finances, but then give the markets a longer-term plan that means we will be able to take some decisions in the short term to crucially invest in health, but also education. It's not just about not passing on debts to our future generation, it's about putting them in a place where they can be successful in a Britain that's got opportunities that means they can make the most of their talents.
Every department and every departmental minister will be trying to demand and defend their own budgets, won't they?
That's right. And actually what we need to recognise is that just doing more of the same in the past won't work anymore.
Okay.
We have to realise that some of that day-to-day spend is investment in people, but it's investing in people that is actually going to change the trajectory of our country.
But we had years of austerity after your budget.
Well, in a sense, what we did was we had to deal with the credit crunch. That's the reality. There literally was no money left, and we also weren't going to be able to borrow at reasonable rates unless we got our finances into shape. I think the key now is that we have to plan for the long term. And so, for example, it's false economy for the government to not accept Sir Kevin Collins' catch-up plan on education after COVID for children because it says it's too expensive, because we'll just end up paying the price of that in 5, 10, 15 years' time.
But schools are already struggling, aren't they, with their heating bills and salaries and everything. I mean, we hear so much from schools on this programme.
Exactly, and what businesses want to see, the businesses I'm working with are up for, and indeed they're working upstream in schools, but they want to see the government, in a sense, matching that sense of priority about building those talent pipelines to get people into jobs and to upskill people who are in lower skilled work now into better paid jobs.
So what we need, though, Tim, I mean, and you are looking quite deeply into how individual economies in our own houses work, because you've got the government's view and what they might be doing on a big scale, but actually it comes down to what, you know, women who are still in the position that your mum was in. Just explain a little bit about your background and what you now feel fundamentally passionate about.
Yeah, growing up in a single-parent household was tough. And I remember when it was double-digit inflation, similarly, and my mum sitting on a doorstep crying, not understanding how she was going to pay the mortgage payments. But essentially, the resilience of immigrant communities, those who have gone through the war and survived, should be the thing that we really enhance people to do, because actually making ends meet was the entrepreneurial nature that she had, buying stuff in bulk, going down to marketplaces and haggling with people, having that whole bartering element. But we shouldn't be forcing people to have to rely on that, because essentially we've had a government in place that should have done much better around providing for that productivity that we want to see going forward.
But you have some tips, don't you? What would you say to people listening this morning, I mean, who say, listen, I don't know how I can cut any more back from what I'm already doing for my kids and for my heating and bills and so on? What can I do? Yeah,
the difficulty is that it's tough for people. We can't get away from that. People are completely struggling now. We're not talking about those on benefits, we're talking about those who are actually working at the same time, right?
Yeah,
like you've mentioned from several people. I think what you have to remember is that when I was growing up, my mum was really clear that when it's cold in the house, put more clothes on. It sounds really harsh, but that's the reality. People haven't got the option to put the heating up. When you're talking about planning for food, make sure that you're spreading that over a longer period of time, buying in bulk, making food go long. I remember if we didn't ever eat our dinner, we used to have it for breakfast the next day. That's how we were brought up. But that thrift, that ability to manage that resource, we have to help people beyond that, because now it is going to get hard.
We've had a number of people getting in touch with community projects. Justine, you've got somebody that you wanted to mention who does amazing stuff in your community.
Yes, thank you. Mo Smith and Andy Smith in Roehampton and Putney do just amazing work and have done for many years, supporting isolated elderly people, getting young people off the alternate estate and really giving them some of that talent and that opportunity to make something of their lives. And it's keeping lives on track that is how we fix our public finances. It's allowing people to be successful and to be able to contribute to our country. That's how we'll get our public finances back in track in the long term.
Jill on email says, thank you for that, Justine. Jill on email says, in Nottingley in West Yorkshire, Gail Merrifield, Pam Burton and the community are opening up their community centre as a warm space to support their community with a warm welcome, free hot food, Wi-Fi and activities for residents.
We are being inundated. It's lovely. We'll try and get as many as we can throughout the show and get the shouts out. But what is really, really reassuring is there are people in communities all over the country that are doing the best to look after everybody around them. Tim, Justine, thank you for coming in this morning.